On average, we have over 6,000 thoughts a day. But have you noticed just one careless comment, an ill-timed glance, or a small thing not going your way can be enough to throw everything off? You keep working, keep talking, keep smiling, but inside, it feels like chaos. Some days you push back against everything. Some days you go silent and drift. And then you start to ask yourself, why does something so small hurt me this much? I don't believe you're weak. It's just that no one ever taught you how to stay grounded in a world that's spinning out of control. Emotional strength doesn't come from suppression, and it doesn't come from pretending everything's fine. It comes from being able to recognize your emotions, master your reactions, and live by your values, even when life gets hard. Welcome to Stoic App, where we learn how to master ourselves, calmly and quietly. In this video, I'll share with you 10 habits drawn from over 2,000 years of Stoic practice, from Marcus Aurelius to Epictetus, not to make you cold, not to help you escape your emotions, but to help you keep your inner peace even when everything around you feels lost. If you're ready, let's begin with the first habit: pause before you react. 1. Pause before you react. I used to think I was a hot-headed person, sensitive, quick to react. Every time someone said something that touched my ego even just a little, I would immediately snap back. Or if I didn't say anything, I'd carry the irritation with me the whole day. I blamed my personality, my circumstances, and the people who didn't know how to behave. But in truth, it was because I had never learned how to pause. There was a time I was coming home from work tired, hungry, my mind spinning from deadlines. My girlfriend at the time simply asked, "Could you care about me a little right now?" And I exploded. I said things I later wished I had never said, not because she was wrong, but because I had let my emotions drive me instead of me driving them. A gentle question became the final drop that spilled the cup, not because it was too much, but because the cup inside me was already full and I didn't know it. That's when I started reading, writing, practicing breathing, and I came across Epictetus. He said, "It's not what happens to you that makes you suffer, it's how you react to it." Put simply, you can't control the wave, but you can choose whether to ride it or be swept away. The first time I heard that, I brushed it off as just another bookish quote. But the more I lived, the more I experienced, the more I understood he was right. Emotions are not the enemy. Anger, hurt, sadness, they all deserve to be felt. But explosive, uncontrolled reactions usually don't come from the situation itself. They come from not knowing how to pause. 1 second of pause can save a relationship. 1 deep breath can stop you from doing something you'll regret. Barack Obama once said, "You can feel anger, acknowledge it, but then you must choose what comes next." When he was still President of the United States, he was once sharply interrupted by a reporter during a press conference. He paused, didn't snap, didn't retaliate, just took a light breath, looked straight ahead and said, "Excuse me, but I wasn't finished." Just 1 sentence, but it carried real weight. No shouting, no contest. Just pausing at the right moment was enough to quiet the entire room. I started practicing that. Every time I felt my heart pounding, my voice wanting to rise, I counted 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. That's it. Not to suppress anything, but to come back to myself. To become the one who chooses how to respond, not someone pulled around by emotion. I'm no longer someone who gets angry easily. Not because I don't feel anything, but because I know when to stay silent. I know what deserves my reaction and what doesn't. You don't have to become a calm saint, but if you learn to pause just once, you'll feel the difference. 1 pause can stop a fight. 1 pause can save a relationship. One pause can be the beginning of a stronger self from within. We don't need to be invincible. We just need to stop getting swept away every time the wind blows. And that begins the moment you learn to pause. You can't control what people say to you, but you always have the right to choose. Is it worth trading your peace for? Morning meditation. Your daily identity of peace. There's one thing I've realized. After years of struggling, we can't control an entire day. We can't predict how many emails will come in, who will upset us, or what will throw our plans off track. But there's one small moment, tiny, really, that still belongs to us. It's the morning. That moment right after you open your eyes, before your mind is pulled away by the world. It's a threshold gate where you get to choose whether to step into your day with awareness or fall back into old reflexes. Most people, and I used to be one of them, start the day in a reactive state. The phone rings, you pick it up, check messages, meetings, social media. From the very first second, you already feel late, lacking, like you're being chased. Before you even know who you are, you've already been pulled into the role of someone who must hustle, who must tough it out, who isn't allowed to slow down. I lived that way for years, and every morning felt exhausting even before doing anything. Until one day, I came across a line from Marcus Aurelius, an emperor, a philosopher, and a man who carried more weight than all of us combined. He wrote, "At dawn, when you have trouble getting out of bed, remind yourself, I rise to do the work of a human being, not to do work, not to answer emails, but to do the work of a human, to live, to breathe, to face life, and to do what's right." Kobe Bryant, basketball legend, known for his ruthless discipline nuance, shared something similar in his own way. Kobe said he used to wake up at 4 a.m., not to train right away, but to sit in the dark, meditate, write, breathe, and remember who he was and what he was here to do. I sit in the dark. I think. I breathe. That's how I remind myself. I'm not just here to play ball, I'm here to master myself. Like Marcus, Kobe understood. You can't control the game, but you can control how you enter it, and that begins in the morning. Since then, I've started my mornings differently. It doesn't take much, just 15 minutes without interruption. I sit up and take 5 deep breaths. No thinking, no doing, just being. And then I ask myself 3 questions. Simple, but enough to pull me back to center. What is within my control today? What am I about to face, and how do I want to show up? What do I live for, and is it present in today? Just those 3 questions. Sometimes I don't have perfect answers, but every time I ask, I reset my compass. I don't let the day define me, I define the day. The morning isn't for winning. It's for returning to your truest self before the world begins demanding, comparing, and labeling you by performance, by schedule, by appearance. If you miss that moment, it's easy to drift through the whole day not knowing what you're living for. I no longer start the day with my phone. I start with stillness, with a conscious breath, with 3 small questions, just enough to remind me who I am. Because it's true, you can't control an entire day, but you can control how you begin it. And if tomorrow you find yourself overwhelmed by things beyond your control, try starting with the smallest thing you can control, how you step into the morning. You don't need a long journal or monk-like meditation. Just take a few minutes to be fully present, not for anyone else, not for anything else, but simply to remember what you're living for. Don't let a new day begin without you in it. Be present, true from the very first second, and let each morning become the foundation of someone growing stronger from within. You don't need to master your entire life, but if you can master one morning, you're already on the right path. 3. Set your direction. before the world defines you. There are days when you do everything, stay busy from morning till night, complete your tasks, reply to messages, answer emails, check every box on the calendar. But by the evening, you sit down and feel an emptiness inside. Not sadness, not joy, not fulfillment, not even regret. Just that you can't quite remember what you were living for today. I once had an entire year like that. Every morning I was pulled into work, schedules, deadlines, notifications. What I was living for that day I didn't know. I only knew I did a lot, but nothing truly memorable. I didn't fail, but I also didn't feel like I was heading anywhere, because I hadn't asked myself the question, what am I living for today? One evening, after a day considered productive, I sat staring at the dark screen of my laptop and asked myself, if I disappeared tomorrow, what part of today was truly mine? That question came suddenly and I couldn't answer it. I realized I had played my role well, but I hadn't truly lived my part. Seneca once wrote, "If one does not know to which port one is sailing, no wind is favorable. If you don't know where you're going, every wind will feel like it's against you. This world will always have someone trying to pull you. Advertisements want you to spend. Social media wants your reaction. Work wants your urgency. And others want you to meet their expectations. If you don't set your own direction, you'll be steered by everything except yourself." Steve Jobs, in his famous Stanford commencement speech, shared a habit he had kept for years. Each morning, he looked in the mirror and asked himself, if today were the last day of my life, would I want to do what I'm about to do today? And if the answer was no, too many days in a row, he knew something needed to change. You don't have to be Steve Jobs, but you also shouldn't live each day as if everything is fine when deep down you don't even know where you're headed. Every morning, I write just one line, nothing more. Just one question and one answer to myself. What will make today meaningful? Some days it's spend uninterrupted time talking with mom. Some days it's just don't react with anger. Sometimes it's finish one honest piece of writing. And some days it's simply self-respect. The answer may change, but the very act of asking that alone helps me take back the wheel toward what matters before the world begins pulling me in every direction. You don't need to be great. You just need to not fade into the background of your own life. And the simplest way to do that is to choose your purpose each day before old reflexes or others choose for you. Because if you don't set a destination, then every time the waves come, you won't know if they're a challenge to rise above or a sign to turn back. And often, you'll just ignore it and drift. Those who live without a destination will find every wind against them, but those who know where they're going can turn even adversity into a favorable wind. Fourth, don't force yourself to be fine. Face your emotions honestly. There are times when you keep smiling, keep talking, keep working, and moving through people as if nothing's wrong, but deep inside, you're trying not to fall apart. You don't cry, don't break down, don't get angry, but you're not really at peace either. It's like a well-edited film except the sound inside has been muted. And the most exhausting part isn't the emotion rising within, but the act of playing the role of someone stable all day. I went through a phase like that, doing my job well, replying to messages, smiling when needed. But the moment I got home, the restlessness would flood back in like water that had been held back all day, waiting for the dark room to finally break loose. I didn't know if it was sadness or anger or fear. I only knew that it had been far too long since I last sat down and asked, what am I actually feeling right now? When we avoid emotions, they don't disappear. They just go inward, lie dormant and accumulate. And at some point, it only takes something very small, a distant text, a cold glance for everything to come pouring out. We overreact, not because the moment was too big, but because it struck the layer of emotion that had been buried for so long. There was a time, in the middle of an ordinary conversation, when I suddenly felt my heart pounding, my throat tighten. No one had done anything wrong, but the other person's casual comment had touched a deep insecurity I'd never admitted. And I realized then, the things we avoid will always find their way back through the people we love most, in the moments when we're least guarded. Many people think Stoicism teaches us to hide emotions, to be numb, to be calm through everything. But no, Stoicism doesn't teach you to suppress. It teaches you to look directly, not to be swept away by emotion, but also not to reject it. Marcus Aurelius once wrote in Meditations, "When you feel pain, don't add judgment to the pain. See it for what it is, a wave. Then let it pass." Stoics don't deny emotions. They simply don't let emotions rule their lives. And to do that, you have to be able to name the emotion first. I started practicing a small habit that has helped me through many mental storms. Every time I feel uneasy, I write it down, not to analyze or justify, but simply to be honest. I ask, what am I feeling right now? Not fine? Afraid? Lonely? Jealous? Insecure? I write it down. No edits, no judgment. Then I ask, is there something that's making my heart tremble inside? And I wait. Just wait. No need for a perfect answer, just an honest one. If you've never tried this, start today. You don't need to be poetic. Just write a few lines. Write to yourself as if you were the friend you've avoided facing. Sometimes, the moment you can name an emotion you've never dared to say aloud is the moment you finally begin to step out of it. The more I wrote, the more I realized emotions aren't the enemy. Suppression, pretending to be fine, that's what made me weaker. Because when you don't allow yourself to feel sadness, you also lose the ability to fully feel joy. You don't have to be strong all the time. You just need enough courage not to look away when emotions arrive. Courage, sometimes, is not about overcoming fear. It's about standing still when the fear rises, looking straight at it and not running. 5. Accept what doesn't belong to you. You can't stop the rain on the day you have plans. You can't make others understand exactly what you meant. You can't go back and undo a decision from the past. And no matter how hard you try, you can't control this world to always bend in your favor. I know that. But there were times in my life when I still tried to make others understand me, tried to force a relationship to go the right way, tried to control the outcome of things that truthfully were never mine to begin with. And the more I tried, the more exhausted I became. It felt like swimming upstream for days, only to realize the river never cared how hard you were trying. I still remember nearly breaking down just because of a cold, distant response from someone I thought would understand me. I had written a long message, honest, kind, heartfelt, and waited for a reply that matched its sincerity. But all I got was a short, detached sentence. In that moment, I didn't just feel hurt. I felt angry, powerless, like my worth had been rejected. What I didn't realize was this. I was trying to control something beyond my reach, someone else's feelings, their understanding, their response to my expectations. There's something Epictetus taught, and only later did I truly understand its power. Some things are up to us, and some things are not. Everything in life can be divided into two groups: what belongs to us and what doesn't. Your response to a situation that's yours. Other people's feelings, actions, and choices are not. Your attitude toward life, that's yours. Your reputation, the results, praise or judgment from the world are not. We don't lose our freedom because someone takes it from us. We lose it because we cling to what was never ours to hold. We lose our peace not because life is too complicated, but because we refuse to let go of things beyond our reach. I started training myself in a small habit, but one that became a powerful remedy for days I felt lost. Every morning, I divided a page into 2 columns. On one side, within my control. On the other, not mine to control. On the left, I wrote my thoughts, how I would face today's pressure, the tone I'd use when being misunderstood, how I would respond instead of react. On the right, I wrote other people's emotions, my boss's attitude, the final outcome, what had already happened. What I couldn't control, I stopped letting it take up space in my mind. This isn't indifference. On the contrary, it's a way to live with clarity and greater responsibility for myself. When I stopped trying to force things to go my way, I finally had enough strength to do my part with awareness and calm. I don't need to control the whole world to be at peace. I just need to return to the world what was never mine to carry. Viktor Frankl, psychiatrist and Holocaust survivor, lost everything: his family, his name, his freedom, but he held on to one thing: the ability to choose his attitude. Everything can be taken from a man but one thing. The last of the human freedom stow, choose one's attitude in any given set of circumstances. And that choice is what saved him in the heart of hell. Freedom, in truth, is not having everything. It's knowing what to hold and what to release. If something today is weighing heavy on you, try writing on a sheet of paper with 2 columns, within my control and not mine to control. Just do that each morning, and you'll see peace doesn't come from gripping harder but from letting go at the right moment. If this chapter touched something in you, share it with someone else who's been trying too hard to hold everything together. And if you want to keep walking this path of awareness, calm, and inner strength, stay with me for the next chapters. Stoicism doesn't promise life will be easy, but it will always remind you of this: you don't need to control the world to master yourself. 6. Speak less. To listen to yourself and others. Have you ever met someone like this? They don't talk much, don't try to impress, don't interrupt, but their presence, calm, grounded, unpretentious, makes you pause, makes you listen, makes you adjust the way you speak. They don't try to take up space, but precisely because of that, they command full respect. I used to talk a lot, not because I was confident, but because I was afraid of being misunderstood, afraid of being overlooked, afraid people wouldn't see my good intentions or value unless I rushed to show it. And the more afraid I was, the more I talked. I talked fast, I talked long, I said more than necessary. Once, in an important meeting, I finished my presentation and then kept going just to make sure others saw my effort. But the more I spoke, the more their eyes drifted away. I saw someone check their watch, another scroll through their phone, and by the time I stopped, no one was truly listening. I wasn't criticized, but I understood. I had just weakened something that was originally solid. Talking too much sometimes isn't because we have a lot to say. It's because we're trying to protect something inside that isn't yet steady: self-respect, confidence, or the fear of being left behind. But ironically, the more we speak to prove, the more we lose our calm, our credibility, and our depth. Marcus Aurelius once wrote, "If it's not necessary, don't say it." Some things we say aren't wrong, but they're not needed. Some words we try to actually make others retreat from the conversation. Stoicism doesn't tell us to be completely silent. It simply invites us to speak less than we think, and think more before we speak. Not just Marcus Epictetus, once a slave, taught his students, "We have 2 ears and 1 mouth for the purpose of listening more than speaking." For him, speaking hastily was a sign of an undisciplined mind. Epictetus required his students to remain silent during their first year, only observing, reflecting, and listening, so that when they finally spoke, they would do so in service of reason, not ego. And Seneca, in his letters to Lucilius, constantly reminded, "Don't speak to persuade, speak only when your words are worth remembering." To him, words shouldn't be used to fill space, but to express stability. And often, silence was the response people remembered most. I began practicing a small habit. Before speaking, I would ask myself, am I about to share something, or am I trying to be acknowledged, to prove something? If I was speaking just to be affirmed, to fill a silence, to avoid awkwardness, I stopped. I chose to listen. Because listening isn't passive. Listening is an active choice to connect more deeply with others and with yourself. What I didn't expect was, when I stopped speaking too much, I began to hear my own voice more clearly inside. I could hear what I truly wanted to say. I could tell what was impulse and what was valuable. And when I did speak, I spoke less. But I spoke more accurately, and those words landed deeper than anything I had tried to say before. Silence is not emptiness. Sometimes, silence is the loudest thing you've ever said. 7. Training your body is also training your will. Ryan Holiday, of the most influential modern writers on stoicism, starts his day with something seemingly simple: running, no phone, no headphones. He doesn't run for sport, but for a single reason: to keep his body strong enough for his mind to stay clear. "In discipline is destiny," he writes. "You cannot think clearly if your body is falling apart. Strength is not for show, it's for endurance, for service." When your body is sluggish, stagnant and tired, don't expect your mind to be sharp, resilient or calm. A person can't stand firm if their legs are trembling. And you can't face life's challenges if your body is used to avoiding every form of discomfort. I used to think I only needed to train my mind, not my body. That as long as I read deeply, thought critically, and managed my emotions, I'd be fine. But I was wrong. On the days I was lazy with movement, I felt foggy, emotionally impulsive, and unable to focus on anything for long. I realized the body is the first gateway to self-mastery. A person who lets their body weaken is also letting their willpower erode day by day. Physical discipline doesn't just make you healthier, it teaches you to master the smallest things: sleep, rhythm breathing, your reaction to fatigue, and your attitude toward cold, laziness, or a little pain. Every time you take the stairs instead of the elevator, you're saying to yourself, "I choose the harder way over the easier escape." And the one who can train that truly has inner strength. Seneca once wrote, "Train in times of peace so you do not collapse when war arrives." The wise don't wait for disaster to strike before they learn to be resilient. They train for it every day in things that seem insignificant. Walking in the rain, sitting still in the heat, taking cold showers when warm water is an option. These acts aren't to appear tough, they're to maintain steadiness inside, even when the outside world shifts. There are mornings when I still want to delay. The weather is cold, my body feels heavy, my mind whispers, "Just go tomorrow." But in that moment when you get up, put on your shoes, and step outside, not because you're motivated, but because you chose discipline, that's when you become someone new. No longer a person chasing feelings, but someone who can lead themselves. If you don't know where to start, begin with just 15 minutes of movement each morning. No gym, no equipment needed. Push-ups, walking, deep breathing, a cold shower, climbing stairs instead of the elevator, taking a walk without holding your phone. These small things, if done consistently, will become the foundation for facing far greater challenges ahead. A strong body doesn't need bulging muscles. It's a body that's not sluggish, not full of complaints, not afraid of small discomforts. When you can endure cold, endure a racing heart, endure tired legs, you can also endure silence, rejection, and loss. Because physical discipline in the end is also training the mind to stay grounded through life's storms. If you're still waiting for a big surge of inspiration to start training, stop. Don't wait for motivation. Begin with a small act. Get out of bed 15 minutes earlier. Take a walk with no sound. Choose stairs over the elevator. Not to be stronger, but to be steadier. And if this chapter touched something you've been needing to reclaim, share it with someone you know who's living in a tired body and a will that's slowly falling asleep. Stoicism doesn't ask you to run fast, only that you don't stay still when your soul is asking to be awakened. 8. Night is when you realign the wheel of your life. I used to have a good job, a packed schedule, non-stop. Every morning, I rushed out like a machine handling dozens of emails, jumping from one meeting to another, never letting myself fall behind. At night, I ate quickly, watched a short video to numb my mind, then passed out. I called that productivity. But every night when the lights dimmed, when the phone stopped buzzing, I felt like I was living, but not really present. Not because I had failed, but because I had never stopped to ask, what am I living for? I began living by the schedule, but no longer living with meaning. Everything was functioning. Except me, I was no longer truly there. If you don't reflect on today, you will repeat it tomorrow. And the things repeated without intention will slowly turn you into a fading version of yourself. A person who lives efficiently, but without direction. A person who works hard, but has no idea where they're going. There is no enemy more dangerous than the habit of unreflected living, because it doesn't destroy you in a day, it pulls you off your true path little by little, until one day you can't find your way back. Marcus Aurelius, the emperor of an entire empire, a man who could command tens of thousands of soldiers, chose to spend the final minutes of each day writing in his journal, not for history, but for himself. He wrote to ask, have I lived today in accordance with the nature of a human being? To Marcus, reflection wasn't a moral habit. It was a conscious act of holding on to the self in a world where it's all too easy to lose who you are. Because what makes us lose ourselves is rarely one big event, it's the accumulation of days lived without intention. And it wasn't just Marcus. Benjamin Franklin, of the greatest minds in American history, also ended each evening in conversation with himself. Before going to bed, he recorded a single question: what good have I done today? And he never skipped a day. Franklin didn't write to appear virtuous. He wrote to stay aligned, to know whether he was living in accordance with the values he believed were worth living for. I followed their example in a simple way. Before sleeping, I write down 3 things. Did I live rightly today? What did I learn? What do I want to do differently tomorrow? Some nights I didn't want to write. Some nights I only wrote down something very small, but because of that, I didn't repeat the same mistake. I began to see more clearly what I was drifting toward and where I needed to return to in order to hold on to myself. Writing is not about being perfect. Writing is about leaving an anchor, a small dot, so that as each day passes, you can still see yourself inside it. A processo, the mind isn't swept away by habits, emotions, or the voices of others. You don't need to write beautifully, just honestly. You don't need to be a philosopher. But if you're not willing to speak with yourself each night, then the one living this life might no longer be you. 9. Cultivating gratitude, even before greatness arrives. If tomorrow morning you only had the things you were grateful for today, what would you have left? Not a philosophical question, but a sober reminder that we're living surrounded by countless precious things, and yet we've forgotten how to recognize them. Every day, our minds are pulled toward what we don't have, what's not enough, what we haven't achieved. And that's exactly what makes happiness 7, when it's right in front of us, feel so distant. The human mind is wired for scarcity. It's a survival mechanism, but also our greatest trap. You could have a peaceful day, no accidents, no problems, no one hurting you. And yet just one small thing goes wrong, and you forget everything that was going well. It's not because you're ungrateful. It's because you haven't learned how to feel full when your mind is used to living in lack. I used to be like that, low on motivation, easily frustrated, always feeling like something was off in life. But then one night, I tried writing down 3 things I was grateful for, even if they were small. A calm meal without rushing, an unexpected call from someone from the past, and the sound of the neighbor's cat when I was feeling lonely. The moment I finished writing, I breathed slower. I realized I was still here, not perfect but alive, and with enough to know that today wasn't meaningless. Epictetus once said, "Don't spoil what you have by desiring what you have not. Don't ruin the present just because you're chasing a future that hasn't come." That quote doesn't tell you to give up your dreams. It simply reminds you, fullness doesn't come from the outside. It comes from the way you look. When you're grateful for small things, you maintain inner strength even when big things haven't arrived. Stoics are not happy because they have more. They're happy because they depend on nothing except their own choices. And gratitude is not a random feeling. It's a conscious act, a discipline of the soul. You don't need to wait for a major success, a special occasion, or a stroke of luck to feel grateful. Just take a moment each night before going to sleep to write down 3 small things you're thankful for today. A glass of cold water, a warm glance, or simply the fact that you still have the strength to take a deep breath. Something small, but enough to remind you that today you're still alive and life is not empty. And if you want to turn gratitude into action, do one simple thing tonight. Call your parents and tell them you're thankful they're still here. Text an old teacher, a friend who helped you, someone you haven't spoken to in a while, but who once made you better, and say thank you. It doesn't have to be long. It doesn't have to be dramatic. One sincere sentence is enough to remind you, you're not walking through this life alone. Happiness is not about having more, but about seeing the value in what you already have. And if you begin with gratitude, then even without something grand, you've already gained what so many are losing: full presence in your own life. If this chapter made you think of someone who once helped you, stood by you, or did something good for you, send them a message tonight. One simple line: "I just wanted to thank you because what you did still stays with me." Low. And if you want to cultivate a mind that feels full, don't let the day pass without being grateful for at least one thing. 3 lines each night, 3 thank yous, 3 anchors of presence. Don't just listen, live, and start with the smallest thing: gratitude. 10. Say no clearly, without guilt. Have you ever gone through this? Someone asks you for a favor, you know you don't have time, you don't really want to do it, but you still say yes, because you don't want to upset them, because you're afraid of disappointing, because you think, if I say no, maybe I'm being selfish. But then afterward, you feel drained, frustrated with yourself, and you wonder why you couldn't just say no. And then you do it again and again. I used to be like that. My calendar slowly filled with invitations I couldn't refuse, I showed up in places I didn't want to be. I did things for others, but felt like I was draining myself dry. Worse, I started feeling irritated with people I once cared about, not because they did anything wrong, but because I had let them cross lines I never dared to draw. Every time you say yes just to avoid saying no, you lose a piece of yourself. Not knowing how to say no is one of the fastest ways to lose sight of your center. You stay busy but feel hollow. You seem kind but it's not sincere. And slowly, you forget the difference between what you actually want and what you're just doing to not let anyone down. Marcus Aurelius once wrote, "If it's not essential, don't do it." That one line can change your entire life if you dare to live by it. Stoics don't live to follow the crowd, and certainly not to be liked. They live with intention. They understand time is finite, and focus is the most precious resource, and if you don't protect it with clear boundaries, you'll be swept into other people's lives piece by piece. Saying no isn't closing your heart. It's creating space for clarity. I started learning to say no, short, simple, without guilt. Before agreeing to anything, I'd ask, does this bring me closer to the values I choose to live by? If not, I smile and say no. No need to apologize. No need to make excuses. No need to prove I'm still kind. I just need to be honest with myself. Some people walked away. Some got upset. But what I kept was myself. My energy stopped scattering. My presence stopped fragmenting. And most importantly, I started loving the relationships where I could simply be me without the pressure to please. Saying no isn't rejection. It's a conscious act to protect what you're truly living for. Not every opportunity is wrong, but if you don't know how to choose, even a world full of chances will leave you wandering like a broken compass. And someone who can't say no will soon have no time left to say yes to the most important thing in their life. Maybe you still don't know where your life is heading. Maybe you're stuck between choices, crossroads, and the voices in your head. But sometimes what you need most isn't a map that lays out every direction, but simply one solid step, true to the values you quietly believe in. A kind act, an honest decision, a thank you left unsaid. A moment when you choose not to turn back. Sometimes, just that is enough to make tomorrow different from today. Marcus Aurelius once said, "Do what is right, the rest doesn't matter." That line doesn't ask you to know everything in advance. It doesn't require you to be brilliant, brave, or perfect. It simply reminds you, there is always one thing still in your hands, even when the world outside is chaos, and that is your ability to choose what's right, each day. You don't need to change your entire life after this video. But if there's one habit that makes you feel like you've come back to clarity, to calm, to the sense that something is still worth believing in, then hold on to it. Repeat it. Grow it. Because it's not just a behavior, it's a way of declaring how you choose to live. Thank you for making it this far. Thank you for not skipping over yourself. And if you want to continue this journey of mastering yourself, of truly living each day, Stoic App will always be here. Quiet but deep, still but never faint, calm, unshaken, but always reminding you to live true.